Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoy this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Bladee, Red Light. Bladee, I mean, at this point, does he even need an introduction? Been featured on my channel multiple times at this point. Links to all of them will be in the corner if you're curious to go check those out. However, this is the first Bladee album I'm going into with a bit of a grain of salt, with this being Bladee's second studio album, Red Light. For those who don't know, this album is kind of infamous in the review sphere, most notably for Fantano dropping a fat 1 out of 10 bomb on this album. And back in the day, that was kind of the reason why I left Bladee out of my musical journey. However, times change, and with my many exposures to Bladee's music and discography up to this point, I got pretty happy to look at this notorious album of mine, so to speak. So let's dive in. What are my thoughts on Red Light? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there only being one, with that being Decay, which is a surprisingly poppy and very catchy song. I love the blinking beeps and the crashing waves of synths flooding the track, combined with some immaculate clicky hi-hat and bass. I do think Bladee's vocals are a bit quiet in the mix, but only through scattered moments when the instrumental is fully visualized. That kind of inconsistency is a little bit irksome, but oftentimes the melody kind of makes me forget about that, being the main contributor to that catchiness I mentioned earlier. As Bladee is still rapping about the same things, in this case mental decay, and more flexing his click and drugs as well. Honestly, a fantastic choice for a single. Now for the rest of the tracks. The opener 1D, which looking back in hindsight kind of feels like a bit of a trailblazer for Bladee's sonic direction going forward. The plunky synths are so colorful, vibrant, and sweet, and paired with the perfectly paced hi-hat and tinted oscillating bass, it's an effortless vibe and one that always manages to put me in a good mood. Bladee gets a bit buried in the mix on this track, which kind of prevents me from fully loving the song, but the beat is so fun, it's hard not to love the track. Golden Boy is a song I'm not crazy about. It's very mellow and coincidentally very barren. Compared to the blossoming, blissful cuts I just listened to, this is very skeletal. No peppy synth work at all, just these icy gusts of wind whistling through the song. And not like Ever Since Icy, that was glistening and majestic, but like Tundra Icy, just dense, infinite snow as far as the eye can see. That may be some people's vibes, and if it is good for you, please continue to enjoy that. But at least for me, you can't just drop a lively cut like 1D as the opener and then subsequently drop the listener in this barren wasteland that is the song. It's also one of the longer cuts here, which makes it drag a bit as a result. Yeah, not feeling this one. Pass. Westfield thankfully brings this mood back up to a strikingly upbeat caliber like on the opener, but this would be what I meant when I said Ever Since Icy. The synths twinkle and shimmer while behind the pounding bass wall. It's an extremely beautiful mix where you think those bass stunts would be distracting, they're really not. In fact, I'd say it amplifies the resplendent glows of those synths. I also love how Bladee is in a bit more of his monotone side, yet in a slight falsetto throughout, even going through a flow change for that final chorus. It's a downright hypnotizing song, and I am all for it. Great stuff. Fake News is a pretty okay track. I'm not head over heels for this one though. The instrumental is again pretty minimal and muted. There's a decent synth prominence here that I do enjoy hearing them ring out alongside the hi-hat and bass, but it's just not the best here by a mile. Another thing I don't really care for is the vocal mixing and how radically it varies in quality. 1 minute on the chorus he sounds just fine, but on the next bar he's just completely smothered by the mix. It's very weird and off-putting, at least for me. The melody is catchy enough though, and the beat does have a solid enough vibe, even if it's presented in a more bland arrangement. Just kind of an okay track. Steve Jobs is another song that has a pretty solid instrumental, but I'm just not absolutely crazy about it like I was with Bladee's other and better songs. I do like the mystical synths and a hi-hat and the echoed effect on Bladee's voice. I'm not crazy about his flow though. It doesn't click with me too much, and the melody as a result feels a bit lacking here. Also, there's a bizarre fogginess to the song that may seem a bit confusing, but I'm not really sure how else to describe it. The song feels cloudy. Maybe it's a mixing issue, I don't really know. Anyway, I do totally get why some people would really like this. I guess this one just wasn't my cup of tea. Obedient featuring Echo 2K, which seems to be one of Bladee's biggest hits. And yeah, I totally get why. The song starts off a bit murky with some enshrouded vocal effect put on Blade's voice, letting it just kind of run for a bit while these metallic chiming synths ring in the back. But then eventually the track drops with the bass and hi-hat being the most noticeable elements of this instrumental, overpowering the synths. Blade delivers with a very nice vocal melody, and Echo's softer falsetto really play to the breakdown well. I wouldn't say it's a resounding standout in Blade's catalog, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't one of my favorites from the album. For You, again featuring Echo 2K, has almost as much of a skeletal beat that Golden Boy did, but this one does this style right in multiple ways. One, the melody is instantly more gratifying and catchy, the song itself is also faster. Two, the instrumental still has a decent chunk of bounce and jive with the popping bass. And three, there's a secondary presence here to vary it up. Speaking of which, the performances on here are very solid. Blade's more frozen, stone-faced delivery, trading back and forth with Echo's more melodic, whispery flow is very appealing. Yeah, this one's pretty great. Not a favorite by any means, but a good reassurance that Blade can still pull off this minimal style well. Hex has a very retro video gamey synth lick that I especially enjoy, and is also very prominent in the mix. It's balanced well between the stamping bass and clicky hi-hat. One thing I can definitely say is it's an incredible crisp vibe all the way throughout. Doesn't do anything stand out, even Blade's melody and vocal presence is a bit generic here, with some especially grating autotune this time around, but it's a very pleasant track. Nike Just Do It, the longest track on the album, and the only one here to surpass 4 minutes, and this one has a very ethereal, spacious mood to it. Very slow tempo, a pacing similar to Golden Boy, but the lush production helps this one stand out. Just a cosmic dome of ominous ambience and glittery synths. The slow bass pounds only amplify that slower mood as well. The issue with this one for me though is it's just too long. The vibe wears off for me about halfway through, and the despondent outro gets a bit too sleepy for my tastes. I can definitely see why people would love this track though, but I don't think this is one I'm going to keep around. That Thing You Do featuring Uli K, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but this is another one I'm not overly crazy about. It's still fine, but I think the biggest reason why I'm not enjoying this one is Blade's seriously drab delivery. Overly drab even, especially for the hook. He just comes off as bored. Sure, you can argue his signature monotone style is also just that, but he's just repeating the song title in the most boring fashion, and it just does not connect. It feels very lifeless, and when the production also caters to that downtrodden style with an ensconcing deep ambience, with the synths being covered up, leaving only the hi-hat and the bass, it's just a very meh track, and I'm not feeling the overall vibe on this one. College Boy is a nice pick-me-up this late in the record, a very solid track here. I like the melody, especially for the chorus, the bass has a good amount of weight to it, and even though the track is a little bit foggy and murky in its overall energy, it's still got a solid enough vibe to really enjoy. I also like hearing Blade go through flow changes, and he does a few on this one, always a captivating change for me in Blade's music. Still not a favorite of mine, but I would probably keep this one around more often than not. Puppet Master is the obligatory slower track near the end of the record. Zero percussion, just a moody, plucky synth melody. Feels like a soundtrack to desolation. It's bleak and kind of provokes an introspective vibe. This is where Blade's monotone delivery really excels, and is one of the best I've ever heard from him, perfectly capturing that isolation and how damaging it can all be. Gorgeous production all over it too. I think this would have been an immaculate closer. Kind of a shame that it wasn't. And finally, the closer, I'm Goofy, which is a pretty solid banger to finish the record. The bass is some of the most buoyant it's been on the record, and the starry twinkles of the synths and the flourishing keys are amazing accompaniments to that. Blade's flow is great, really blends in well with the beat to create this otherworldly vibe, while these lyrics really show a lot about flexing and his group connections, and all the luxurious activities and accessories he has. Great track, but I do think Puppet Master would have been a more satisfying closer. Overall, I think out of every Blade project I've heard up to this point, this is so far my least favorite. It had some amazing tracks, probably some that would end up in my top 10 Blade songs for now, but looking at the overall record as a whole, it's one of his more one-note albums. Some of the tracks were just overly minimal, the vibes didn't really connect with me. However, I didn't shout this out too much, but producer White Armor handles production on pretty much every song here, and my god, it was a near flawless run in that regard. Amazing beats and producing all over this. Plus, I just gotta say, really Fantano, a 1? There is no way in existence this is a 1. However, I am feeling a pretty solid 7 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.